Asatu ma sadgamaya tamasho ma jyotirgamaya mrityur ma mritam gamaya aviravir maidhi rudro jatte dakshinam mukham tena mang pahi nityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. And evermore protect us by your loving presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. What a great surprise, no? And a bonus. Swami is going to Asiloma retreat, so I knew that he will come, but I was thinking that he'll be tired, I won't bother him. But suddenly he agreed after so much tiring journey today. So we don't need any introduction, we all know. He's our very dear Swami, and when he comes it gives joy to us, and he speaks of God and only inspires us so much. That is the greatness of the sadhu. And we are very happy not to spend much time in other words. Rather, he will be speaking on the message of the Upanishads today. Welcome, Swami.
Pranams to revered Swami Sarvapriyananda, and revered monks, revered Matajis present here. And namaste to everybody else. Great to be back here. And I'll be back here next week again. I'm sort of like the Terminator. I keep coming back. Today is actually a historical day. We have some information, courtesy our Matriprana Mataji. So this is the day on which Swami Turiyanandaji came here, 8th July, 1900. So on 4th July 1900, Swami Turiyananda left New York by train, accompanied by Swami Vivekananda and Miss Book. So this was the last time that Vivekananda and Turiyananda were together. Turiyananda would never see Vivekananda after this. Just before Swami Vivekananda disembarked at Detroit, Turiyananda asked him for advice regarding his future work. And Swami Vivekananda told him, "Go and establish the ashrama in California. Hoist the flag of Vedanta there. From this moment, destroy even the memory of India. Above all, live the life, and Mother will do the rest." Which Turiyananda promptly decided not to do. He lived a life, but neither the memory of India nor the memory of Vivekananda, he couldn't erase them. And he was very disturbed when he heard about Vivekananda's state of health, and he decided to go back to India. He had visions from the Divine Mother telling him not to go back, but he did go back. And he regretted it ever afterwards. But that's going ahead of our story. So Turiyananda arrived in Los Angeles on this day, 8th July, 1900. And he was the guest of the Mead sisters in Pasadena. So the sisters received Swami Turiyananda warmly upon his arrival in California. Carrie and Helen, they were initiated by him, by Swami Turiyananda. And they were named Lalita and Shanti respectively. Swami Turiyananda told Sister Lalita, "You will have a work to do, but it will be a quiet work." So what she did was, Sister Lalita is this. This was her house. This was her property. Her Hollywood residence, 1946 Ivar Avenue. And all the other property was gifted to promote the spread of Vedanta. Swami Prabhavanandaji set up here the Vedanta Society of Southern California. And the house where she lived in Pasadena, that also has now become the Vivekananda house. And here we are. So it is historical today. The message of the Upanishads. That's the subject for this evening. I'll speak for a while. I am jet lagged, so regardless of what Maharaj says, I am jet lagged, so don't take what I say seriously. I'll speak for a while, and then we can have some Q&A, where people can ask questions. And it's good. In a way, this is good. This is a small, more intimate gathering. The message of the Upanishads, one way, and it's wonderful that the Upanishads can be summed up. It's a vast, vast literature, but it can be summed up quite elegantly. There is a statement attributed to Adi Shankaracharya, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya Jiva Brahmaiva Napara. Brahman alone is real, the world is an appearance, and the individual being, the sentient being, is none other than Brahman. And this is said to be the essence of the Upanishads, the whole Upanishadic message condensed into half a verse, into one sentence. You want to make it shorter? You can make it even shorter. There are the well-known, what are now called Mahavakyas, the great statements, statements of profound meaning. Tat Tvamasi from the Chandogya Upanishad, that you are. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Ayam Atma Brahma, this very self is Brahman from the Mandukya Upanishad. And Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness itself is Brahman from the Aitareya Upanishad. These are representative statements, and they all mean the same thing. They all mean the same thing, the identity of the individual sentient being and the ultimate reality, the absolute Brahman, that they are one and the same. You can make it even shorter. It doesn't even have to be a whole sentence, even a short sentence like the Mahavakyas. It's just, you can just say Om. Om is the condensed message of the Upanishads. For example, if you want to break it apart, analyze it in the Mandukya Upanishad, the whole Upanishad is about Om. The three states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, all appearing, playing around, and disappearing in one limitless consciousness. That's the meaning of the Upanishads. And that limitless consciousness, you are. You can make it even shorter. Not even Om. The gesture, this is called the Chin Mudra. This one. A gesture expressing the intent of the Upanishads. What does this mean? The three bodies, the physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body. The physical body, this one. And the subtle body, which we experience inside as our own personality. Thoughts, feelings, ideas, emotions, our own narrative, memories, desires, emotions and all, feelings. All of that tied together with the ego. I am this. That's the subtle body. And beyond that, the causal body, a seed state, which we generally do not take into consideration, but what we experience in deep sleep. So that's the physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body. Causal, not casual. So causal body. And generally, that's what we think we are. Look, who am I? This one. I. Who am I? I am this. Here. This is what I am. No matter what we study, what we read, what we think about ourselves, sort of instinctively, who am I? This. And what is this? It is I. That's what I am. And these three bodies, we identify with it intimately, that I am this, and nothing more. And Vedanta says, no, you are not. It says, you are this limitless consciousness. To realize this is the teaching of the Vedanta, and realization of that is enlightenment. So the I is not to identify with the physical, subtle, and causal bodies, but to identify with limitless consciousness. So when the I identifies with limitless consciousness, that's what our real nature is. This is called the Chin Mudra, the hand gesture expressing enlightenment, or that our consciousness nature. That's Vedanta. That's the intent of the Upanishads. You can make it even simpler. Go even further. Silence. No sentences, no verses, no Om, no hand gestures, just silence. The teaching is given in silence, and the disciples are enlightened. These teacher is young, the students are old and venerable, and the teaching is given in silence, and all the students, their doubts are dispelled and they are enlightened. This is the Dakshinamurti Stotram of Shankaracharya. I think he was speaking about himself. He was a teenager, and his students were most of them were older than him. Upashantoyam Atma, this very self is of the nature of quiescence, of silence. It wouldn't be much of a talk if I sat here in silence. So I'm going to talk about the message of the Upanishads, but just expand upon this, what I just said. These Upanishads are an extraordinary collection of texts. And it's the cornerstone, it is at the root of our tradition. Vedanta is literally the Upanishads. Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanam. The source of spiritual knowledge called Upanishads is Vedanta, literally. If you want the textual roots of Vedanta, it's the Upanishads. But roots, of course, then there's a flowering, a tremendous development over the centuries and millennia. Swami Vivekananda, he held the Upanishad in the highest regard. There's an oft-quoted passage where he says, these Vedas are central to Hinduism. As the Bible is for the Christians, as the Quran is for the Muslims, as is the Zend-Avesta for the Zoroastrians, as is the Tripitaka, I'm quoting, sort of paraphrasing Vivekananda, Tripitaka for the Buddhists, so are the Vedas for the Hindus. And that's the one which is often quoted. But what is not quoted is the next paragraph, where Vivekananda says, but like the Upanishads, there are no other texts in the world. He says the Bible and the Quran and all are more like the Puranas of Hinduism. The Upanishads are this extraordinary set of texts. Vivekananda said, in the West, I have taught only the Upanishads, for therein lies enough for the liberation of humanity. I have quoted Evan Thompson from his book, Waking, Dreaming, Being, where he says, these Upanishads are so significant in the history of human thought that our history should be dated not as BC and AD, but as before Upanishads and after Upanishads. So, it's not a practical suggestion because there is no particular date for the beginning, before or after Upanishads. But anyway, that's the significance of these Upanishads. And I could go on and on. Schopenhauer, that's also a well-known quote from Schopenhauer, who was the first major Western thinker who studied the Upanishads. And he got it in translation from the Sanskrit original, translated at the command of a Mughal prince, Dara Shukla, into Persian. From the Persian, translated into Latin by a French Indologist, Anquetil de Perron. Into almost incomprehensible Latin, if I'm given to understand. A writer says it's only the lynx-like intellect of Schopenhauer who could ferret out the inner meaning of the Upanishads from that. The translation was called the Upanishad. And Schopenhauer says, I consider no study in the world so beneficial as the study of this Upanishad, except perhaps the originals. It has been the solace of my life, and it will be the solace of my death. There's a description of Schopenhauer sitting and reading the Upanishads with his pet dog sitting there at his feet and looking up at him adoringly. The pet dog was named Atma. Yes. So this is the Upanishads. The message of the Upanishads. On these Upanishads has been built up the system of Vedanta. Through the centuries and millennia, with commentary after commentary, sub-commentarial literature, a vast number of, it's a vast literature generating multiple thought streams, multiple schools of Vedanta. So what I just said now, summarizing the whole of the Upanishads into you are that, I am Brahman, this is the Advaitic the non-dual school of Vedanta. But also, there is the Vishishtadvaita school, the qualified monastic school of Vedanta. There is the Dvaita Vedanta, the dualistic school of Vedanta. There is the Shuddhadvaita, the pure non-dualism school of Vedanta. There is the Dvaita Advaita, the dualistic and non-dualistic school of Vedanta. The Achintya Bheda Bheda, the incomprehensible identity and difference school of Vedanta, and others. Right now we have new schools of Vedanta coming up. The Swami Narayan, the lineage, they have just completed writing the commentaries on the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita, which makes them an authentic school of, independent school of Vedanta also. It's a live commentarial tradition in that sense. So multiple schools emerging from it. But what I'm speaking about is from the classical, the traditional, non-dual Advaita Vedanta perspective, the message of Vedanta. On the Upanishads were written the sutras, Brahma Sutras, which are cryptic, aphoristic statements which harmonize the various statements of the Upanishads. When you study the Upanishads, at first you will be bewildered. They seem to be saying many different things. So to make a coherent, logical system out of it, you have the Brahma Sutras. And then multiple commentaries. So if you want to found your own school of Vedanta, you need to write a commentary on the Brahma Sutras. I was reading S.N. Dasgupta, Surendranath Dasgupta. In one place he says, he declares his intent that maybe I should write another commentary on the Brahma Sutras. We were spared that, thankfully. So that's the idea. And then there's, of course, the Bhagavad Gita, which is one book which is representative of the Upanishads. All the Upanishads are compared to cows, and the milk of the Upanishads is the Bhagavad Gita, delivered by Krishna to Arjuna. So the Bhagavad Gita in itself, if you don't read the Upanishads, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, that is sufficient. That gives us the message of the Upanishads. Okay, so this is textual background to what I'm talking about. The Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, and vast numbers of commentaries and sub-commentaries and sub-commentaries. That's the Sanskrit literature. There's also literature in other Indian languages, in multiple Indian languages based on the Upanishads. And now, of course, in English. Vivekananda, that's what Vivekananda did. When he came here, he says, I taught only the Upanishads in the West. As you can see, I'm sort of beating about the bush. At this point, you can say, move it along. Yes. So let's take a deep dive into the teaching of the Upanishads, the message of the Upanishads. In philosophy, if you take a big picture, there are three great streams or three great divisions in philosophy, departments in philosophy. One is, which answers the question, what is real? Is the world real? Is God real? Are ideas real? Is Harry Potter real? Is the number one real? What is real? What exists? The study of reality. That branch used to be called metaphysics, and now there's a more fancy new name. It's called ontology, the study of being, the study of existence, study of what really is. So that's one branch of philosophy. And at that point, you will immediately ask, how do you know? If you say God is real or heaven exists or world is false, how do you know? So that leads to the second branch of philosophy, which is called epistemology. How do we know anything? The study of knowledge. That is, when we take a look at the claims of philosophy, all of us will ask that question. How do you know these things? So that's the second branch of philosophy. How do we know? What is knowledge? How do we get to know something? And finally, there is another branch of philosophy. It used to be it's an umbrella term for a bunch of different disciplines. The study of ethics. What is right and what is wrong? What is good and what is bad? The study of beauty, aesthetics, art, the philosophy of art, and so on. Basically, this is the area which asks the question, what's the point of it all? Is there any meaning, any point, any value? You can call it the philosophy of value. And the term used is axiology. Axiology. So you have got three big questions and three major branches of philosophy. Ontology, what's real? Epistemology, how do you know? And axiology, what's the point of all of this? Why am I saying this? It struck me about a year or two ago, that what was staring at me in the face for a long time, that look at the answers from Vedanta to these three questions. What is real? And Vedantic answer is Sat, being, existence itself is reality. All that exists is at its core existence itself, being itself. We need to take existence seriously. Existence is reality. And in Sanskrit, this is called Sat, not an existing thing, but existence itself. Just to be, isness. How do we know anything? Knowledge. And the answer from Vedanta, from the Upanishads is Chit, consciousness. At the heart of all knowledge is consciousness. These things can be debated. All of this. Sat, Chit can be debated. So, without consciousness, a machine goes and measures something and records it. Isn't it knowledge? There's no consciousness involved there, as far as we know. So you can debate it. But anyway, the answer from the Upanishads is Chit. Consciousness is what makes knowledge possible. It is the light of all lights. That shining, everything else shines. By its light, everything here is lit up. Consciousness shining, the mind shines with awareness. The mind shining, the senses are lit up. With your senses, the world is revealed to us. Knowledge is possible through consciousness. Consciousness is the light of lights, makes knowledge possible. And what's the point of it all? What can we expect in all of this? And the answer from Vedanta is Ananda, bliss, fulfillment, ultimate, deep, lasting fulfillment. That's the purpose, that's the goal, that's what we can expect. Not only this, these are already amazing, massive, huge claims from Vedanta, that pure being or existence is something that it's not a play of words, something that we should take seriously, that there is something called pure consciousness, and there is the possibility of limitless fulfillment. But then the next, Vedanta goes further, even more stunning claim, that these three are not three, they are one. That which is being is consciousness, and that which is limitless being and consciousness is bliss. Sat is Chit is Ananda. They're not three separate things. And then Vedanta doesn't stop there. Upanishads don't stop there. They go further. And they make the even more stunning claim that this Satchidananda, this limitless existence, consciousness, bliss, is you. You are that. The identity, who am I, what am I? You are this ultimate reality of this universe. This limitless being, limitless consciousness, limitless fulfillment. Recently someone asked Sam Altman, OpenAI, tell us something that you believe in which we don't know. And he said, Atman is Brahman, which is the essence of the message of the Upanishads from an Advaitic perspective. So look at this. This is the Upanishads' answer to the greatest questions in philosophy. What's real? How do we know anything? And what's the point of it all? Sat, Chit, Ananda. This is also the highest and deepest conception of religion that we have. The theologian, David Bentley Hart, Professor Clooney told me he's the most quarrelsome man I've ever met. He is very dialectical. So he wrote this very quarrelsome book against Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, against the new atheists. And the name of the book is The Experience of God as Being, Consciousness, Bliss. I think you're beginning to see a theme here. And he says in that book, it's a polemical challenge to the new atheists. He says, if you want to learn about religion, ask the experts, look at the highest, the deepest formulation of religion. If you want to know about scientists, would you go to a grade school kid, or would you go to a scientist to know about science? So if you want to know about religion, look at the best, the deepest, most profound formulation of religion we have. And his thesis is that this is at the heart of every major religion in the world. Every major religion in the world. But he says there, in that book, It is most clearly there in the Vedanta of India, of Hinduism. And the names of the chapters of his book are Sat, Chit, Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. I still haven't started because the core idea is so profound and so stunning that we are that. You are that limitless existence, consciousness, bliss. Now, if you go back to the Upanishads, you will find they are often in the form of questions and answers. Often, not always, but often in the form of questions and answers. A student asks a question and the teacher gives an answer. And it's a dialogue, a spiritual, philosophical dialogue. Look at the questions. Let's take a look at the questions. Often these questions are so wonderful, so deep, and we feel it is our question, and so we want to jump ahead and listen to the answers. And that's what I felt. I mean, until Professor Arindam Chakravarti, who has spoken here, a philosopher, he said, Swami, stay with the question. Stay with the question. Let the question marinate in you. Soak in the question. Because once the question, make the question our own question, let it vibrate within us, then the answers will be effective. Then the answers will be redoubled in power. And just look at the questions. What extraordinary questions they are. Kena Upanishad. Kene shitam patati preshitam manah kena prana prathama preti yuktaha kene shitam vacham imam vadanti chakshu shrotram kaudeva yunakti. The student is asking, sir, how do these thoughts come in my mind? How do I speak this speech? How do I have the experience of seeing, of hearing, and by extension smelling, tasting, touching? What bright being illumines, inspires all these activities? Now, this question is so wonderful, so sophisticated, thousands of years ago. We're still dealing with this. This is what we call consciousness studies today. It's asking a question about the true nature of ourselves. I mean, look at it. When I say I, what do I see here? I see a body, and I see sensory activity. I see, I hear, I smell, I taste, I touch. But I also have a psychological activity. I think, I feel, I imagine, I remember, I desire, I hate. I wake, I dream, I sleep. What is going on here? That's the question. And I can go on and on about the question. For example, it's one question. He's not asking about physiology and ophthalmology and our ears, and he's not asking about the vocal system, how do we speak. He's not asking about the mind, psychology, none of them. See, when you ask, how do I see? You could say, all right, there's the ophthalmology department in medical school. Go there, and there'll be shelves and shelves of books on the eye. And it's an entirely different question. How do I hear? There are shelves and shelves of books on the ear. And psychology is its own different discipline, with books and books and books. But the question is not about any of these. The question is Kaudeva in singular, what bright being illumines all of these experiences? Our experience of having a body, our experience of speaking, our experience of seeing, hearing, breathing. So physical, physiological, sensory, psychological, all of these experiences, according to the student who's asking a question, the student is, you can see, already pretty advanced. And he's saying there's one being, one reality behind all of that. He's asking, who am I really? What am I really? He's asking, what is the nature of consciousness? He's asking, what's the nature of the self? Just to contrast it, there was a mathematician, Marvin Minsky, at Harvard. I never met him, it's before our time. But in one talk he says, there is no question about consciousness. There's no problem of consciousness. It's just a bundle of problems which we don't know how to handle, and we put them in one basket and say it's the problem of consciousness. But there is actually the problem of seeing, the question about hearing, question about thoughts, and they're all different things. We classify them under one umbrella and we call them the problem of consciousness. Well, the student here thousands of years ago begs to differ from Professor Minsky. Yeah. He says there is a central question in behind all of this. So look at the question. I'm not even going to the answer. Just the question itself. It's so sophisticated. It's so deep. And we are asking this question now. What happens after death? Eternal question. The little boy Nachiketa asks the Lord of Death, Yamaraja, that some say there is something after death. Some say there is nothing. And this is a mystery. Even the gods do not know the answer to this mystery. You are the best person to answer. You are the Lord of Death. Who better than you to teach me about the mystery of death? Swami Vivekananda says that these questions have been asked in the past and answers were found. It's not that the answers have not been found. The answers were found. But each generation must ask them for themselves and rediscover those answers. The answers will be redoubled in strength as we go down the centuries. What happens after death? That is again a nature of the individual. What exactly am I? If I am the body, one answer. After death, nothing. Finished. Gone. If I am the subtle body, the mind, well, if the mind is reducible to the brain, then the mind is gone when the brain is gone. Lights out. Body dead, brain destroyed, mind is gone too. But if the mind is not reducible to the brain, then something exists after death. Something persists after death. We are not gone when the body is gone. Swami Atmavidyanji, he gave me a book, The Irreducible Mind. A huge collection of articles, academic articles, that the mind cannot be reduced to the brain. And this is the claim of all religions of the world. Unless a religion makes this claim, it's not a religion. That something persists after death. This is the discovery of the subtle body. It still isn't our real nature. Upanishads go further, but they say this is the first step towards the discovery of our real nature, that something persists after death. And it goes on. And then the Upanishads went further and they found something beyond the subtle body also, which they called the Atman, the real self. Pure consciousness, pure being, whatever it is. So this is the question about death. Then the other sort of question comes in the Upanishads. Shaunako havai mahashalo angirasam vidhivadupasanna papracha kasminno bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati iti. Shaunaka, a well-accomplished man, he says a great householder, he goes to the teacher. And notice, often the student and the teacher are not monks. They are householders, people in the world. He says Shaunaka was a person, a busy person clearly, very successful, competent in the world. Mahashala literally means somebody who has great sacrificial altars. That means must be pretty well off. So he goes to his master and asks a question. Look at the question. Sir, what is that by knowing which everything is known? What is that one thing by knowing which everything is known? Same question you find in the Chandogya Upanishad, where the young boy Shvetaketu has come back from school and he is arrogant. And his father asks him, well, boy, have they taught you in school that by knowing which everything is known? By knowing one thing, everything is known. And the boy says, no, I don't even think that's possible. I mean, if you want to know about biology, that's one thing. That will not teach you about chemistry. If you know chemistry, that's one thing. That will not teach you about Sanskrit literature. So there are different branches of knowledge. How is it possible that by knowing one thing, you know everything? How is it even possible? And yes, they didn't teach me any of that. And the commentator there says that he asks his father, why don't you teach me? The commentator says, afraid of being sent back to school again. You have to remember, the commentator was a teenager himself, Shankaracharya. Afraid of being sent back to school, he says to his father, why don't you teach me, old man, if you know so much? How is it possible by knowing one thing, everything is known? So we see here two great streams of Vedanta. If you look a little closely what's going on here, you will discover the Mahavakya, the identity statements. One is an inquiry into myself. What am I? Who am I? Another one is an inquiry into all this, the cosmos, the vast. What is all this? And that's all of our knowledge. See, all of our experience and knowledge is of this form, subject and object. I and everything else. This is the object, this is the universe, the cosmos. And I am the microcosm, the little being, this single individual being. I'm the individual, and this is the totality. And the Vedanta, Upanishads ask the question, what is this? What am I? And what is this? What is this? You see these two kinds of questions? One question is, what's going on here? And the other question is, what is the one thing by knowing which I can know all of this? And the dramatic answer to both questions is exactly the same thing. That which you discover, which we discover by an inquiry within, is exactly what you discover by an inquiry outside. Tat and Tvam. This is called, in Vedanta, Upanishads call it that. And this is called I or you. What you will find by an inquiry of the I or the you is what you will find by an inquiry of this, of the Tat. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. Dive a little deeper into this. I'll explain this thing in thrice. I'll explain it thrice. One is the traditional Vedantic way of understanding it, Advaitic way of understanding it. Then two more attempts in a more general approach. Let's see, 3 times. One, the individual is consciousness associated with a subtle body and a physical body. Individual is consciousness with what is called ajnana, individual ignorance, with a layer of the subtle body and a further layer of the physical body. And the cosmos is the same consciousness in association with Maya, projecting the cosmos, the entire universe. Now, this Maya and all its projections being appearances, not ultimately real, there is an underlying identity then. The consciousness there in that individual body and the consciousness underlying this entire universe are one and the same consciousness. So this is the traditional way of explaining Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. If that didn't make much sense, don't worry, it takes at least the study of Vedanta Sara to understand what's going on here. But let's take a different approach to it. 2 more approaches. One is, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Look into yourselves, into ourselves, we will find this consciousness, this awareness. What's the core of ourselves? It is awareness, it is consciousness. You might say, why not the body? Why not the mind? Well, the body and the mind are both revealed to consciousness. Consciousness is, we cannot imagine ourselves without consciousness. But we can imagine ourselves bodiless. You say, can you? Yeah, in your dreams you are at least not this physical body. You have a different dream world. We can even imagine ourselves without a mind, in deep sleep or under general anesthesia. But I am not. I do not exist and I'm not aware, that we cannot imagine. Try it. Try saying, I don't exist. Impossible. You can't say it. Try saying, I don't know. Impossible. You can't say it. You might say, what are you saying, Swami? I don't know lots of things. Yes, I don't know lots of things. X, Y, Z, I do not know. But I do not know. I am not aware. Try saying it. You will give lie to that just by saying it. I do not exist and I am not aware. These are 2 things we cannot say. This is what we feel when we look into ourselves. This Aham Brahmasmi, when you look at the Aham, I, it is awareness. It is existence. Bare. That's the basic minimum. And then you can put layers of mind and emotion and senses and body and all of that above it. But I am. This is the basic. And Brahman is the existence which is appearing as this entire universe, a limitless ocean of existence. And what this Aham Brahmasmi does is, it brings these two together in an identity. I, the undeniable existence consciousness, and yet my problem is, I feel that this existence consciousness, which is undeniable, is still within this body. I feel like an individual existence consciousness. Yes, I am light, but I am a spark of light. I am a flash of light, a bit of light. And this world seems to be vast and endless. What Upanishads say is, bring them together. Aham Brahmasmi means this one existence light is not the one little flash, a little bit of light limited to this body and mind. It is the limitless existence consciousness in which this body and mind are appearing, in which the universe of names and forms is also appearing. It is the underlying limitless existence consciousness. One way of putting this is, Aham Brahmasmi is the identity of consciousness and existence. Awareness and existence. Another nuanced way of putting it would be, when we look into ourselves, what do we find? I'm aware. When we look at the universe, what do we find? It exists. It is. And what Aham Brahmasmi is telling us is, awareness and isness are the same thing. Third way of putting this, what I just said. Again, understanding the same thing. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Our own existence is certain, indubitable. That's what Descartes found when he searched for the one piece of knowledge which couldn't be doubted. The French philosopher, Descartes, he found that I think, therefore I exist. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I exist. David Chalmers has pointed out, it doesn't just have to be I think. It could just as well be I write, therefore I exist. I walk, therefore I exist. I suffer, therefore I exist. Any kind of conscious experience proves my own existence. It cannot be doubted. So Descartes found that there is one thing you cannot doubt, our own existence. But then one might say, big deal. I can't doubt my own existence, but that's the problem. I have an existence which is indubitable, but it's full of problems. I suffer. I get sick. I am poor. I know very little. I am buffeted by samsara. I have 1,001 problems in this world. What good is it saying that you are an indubitable existence? So my own existence is indubitable, without any kind of doubt. You cannot refute it. But it's surrounded by 1,000 problems. And this is what we call aham, I. On the other hand, there is an existence, God's existence, Brahman, which is infinite, which has no problems. God has no problems. God has got all the omnis, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. God has no problems. God is glorious, except one problem. Does God exist? You can doubt it. That's why there are atheists. That's why there is Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and Daniel Dennett. And no matter what David Bentley Hart says, there will all have been atheists and they are going to be atheists. They're atheists, they're agnostics. You can doubt the existence of God. You cannot doubt your own existence. But your own indubitable existence is surrounded by misery and problems. God's doubtful existence is, however, if God exists, it's a glorious existence. What Aham Brahmasmi does is, it brings these two together. Your own certain indubitable existence and the infinite problem-free existence of God brings them together into one identity, into one indubitable infinite existence. This is what Aham Brahmasmi means. Let's go back to the Upanishads. I'll give one example and then stop. You can take questions. There is one more Upanishad in which both of these aspects are clear. The Taittiriya Upanishad. The second chapter of the Taittiriya Upanishad, you have the Brahmanandavalli, the chapter on Brahman. Also known as the Anandavalli, the chapter on bliss. Also known as Brahmavalli, the chapter on Brahma. The bliss of Brahman, Brahman, or bliss itself. How does it go? Brahma vidapnoti param The knower of Brahman attains the highest. This is like a sutra. The whole of the message of the Upanishads is in this statement. The knower of Brahman attains the highest. But the moment we say the knower of Brahman attains the highest, three questions pop up. One is, what is this blessed Brahman by which you, knowing which you attain the highest? What is it? Define it. Second, what do you mean knowing Brahman? What's it like? Third, what do you mean by the highest? What's the prize here? What do I get by all of this? And all three are answered in the next passage, in this Brahmananda Valli in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Tadeshabhyukta satyam jnanam anantam brahma. It is said in the Upanishad or in the Rig mantra that Brahman is infinite existence consciousness. Satyam, existence or reality. Jnanam, consciousness. Anantam, limitless or infinite. That is the definition of Brahman. That answers the first question. What is Brahman? Infinity. And then how do you know Brahman? Satyam jnanam anantam brahma yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman. You have to realize it as shining in the cave of the heart, which is a fancy way of saying you are that. I am that. That infinite existence consciousness shining in the cave of the heart is basically, it's a way of saying that you are that infinite Brahman. And what is the prize you get from all of this? So ashnute sarvan kaman saha brahmana vipaschiteti. That one will enjoy the fulfillment of all desires. When you realize Brahman, the shining Brahman, that I am that Brahman, all your desires are fulfilled. Not that you'll be flooded with Amazon deliveries, and all at once. No, it's just that you attain that for which we have been, for which we order stuff on Amazon, and we are unfulfilled. But by realizing our infinite nature, you are fulfilled. Notice how two things are brought together here. The infinite nature of Brahman and that it is you. That individual is the infinite that is brought together here. So this is, from an Advaitic perspective, the message of the Upanishads. You can express it in multiple ways. And the result of it, that is limitless fulfillment, deliverance from suffering. Swami Vivekananda put it this way, that Vedanta consists of discovering the divinity within ourselves and the oneness of all existence. The divinity within ourselves, which is that the Atman, this existence, infinite existence consciousness place, and the oneness of all existence. One of the Upanishads, okay, I'll end with this. The Isha Upanishad. Mahatma Gandhi used to say that if all of Hinduism were to disappear tomorrow, and the first mantra of the Isha Upanishad still is there, then all of Hinduism would still be there. And that mantra is, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha magrida kasyas vidhanam. This entire world of moving and unmoving, it is to be covered with God, covered with divinity. And Shankaracharya explains there, covered with divinity means to discover the divinity which is already existing there in this world. And then this teaching culminates in the 6th and 7th mantras later on in the Upanishad. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. When one sees all beings in the self, and the self in all beings, then one does not hate. One cannot dislike whom to praise and whom to blame. When praiser and praised, blamer or blamed are but one. And then the Upanishad goes on in this strain of oneness. It says, Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmeva bhut vijanata tatra ko moha kashoka ekatvam anupashyata. For the one who sees oneness, when the moment, Yasmin, at the time of enlightenment, what happens? The entire world becomes one with you. The universe becomes one with you. And then where is delusion? Where is any sorrow after that? Vivekananda put this so eloquently, so beautifully at the culmination of his song of Sannyasin. He says, the I has all become, and the all is I and bliss. The I has all become. The self you see the self as the entire universe. And the all is I. The entire universe is you. Then what's the result of that? What happens? That experience is bliss. That is ananda. Limitlessness is bliss. Oneness is bliss. This oneness of the entire existence. Oneness is the real teaching of the Upanishads. Not so much the falsity of the world appearance, not so much the distinction between consciousness and object. Those are steps to this oneness. The oneness is actual teaching of the Upanishads. I think that's a good place to stop. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. All right, questions, comments? Yes, tell us your name and ask.
My name is Aditya. Microphone. I read the microphone. Wait, bring the microphone. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. I had read that there's a lot of correlation between quantum mechanics, like theory of entanglement, and a theory of Vedanta. Can you comment about that?
Yeah. I don't want to because I'd be like angels. What is this saying? Angels fear fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So I have no expertise at all in that. But it is true that the way modern physics is going, there was a Nobel Prize given to non-locality last year, I think. The way that modern physics is going. For example, my physics is schoolboy physics. I cannot think why the observer would be bought into the fundamental structure of the universe in physics. It seems to be an entirely materialistic approach. Then why, when you're going down to the beginning of the universe, when you're going down to the quantum level, why is there suddenly consciousness involved all over again? Wouldn't be, my paradigm in my mind is the way we have been taught science, is that isn't the observer and consciousness a much later evolute according to science? Why would you circle back to the observer again and consciousness again at the most fundamental levels of physics? So, notice two things are coming up here. There's non-locality and the impossibility of doing away with consciousness. You're again going back to that consciousness, our real nature is consciousness, and the universe is one reality. Same, the Atman is Brahman. I think, who said that? Schrödinger. He was very well read. Schrödinger was well read in Vedanta. Heisenberg was well read in Vedanta. Oppenheimer. Now people are talking about it because of the new movie. Oppenheimer is well read. I got an interesting invitation last year or earlier this year that there's a Harvard club in Manhattan for Harvard alumni. And they said, can you come and give us a talk on Vedanta from Emerson to Oppenheimer? So they were all pretty well read. Oppenheimer used to read the Gita. He was introduced to the Gita by a professor at Berkeley. And he always carried a copy of the Gita with him, and he used to distribute the Gita to his friends. I'm sure he made a bore of himself by pushing the Gita on his friends. His father bought him a Cadillac, and he called it Garuda. Yes, the Vahana of Vishnu. And Schrödinger actually says that this Atman is Brahman is probably the key to the understanding of the universe. So I'll leave it at that. Yes.
My name is Shyam. Yes. I have two questions. I'll just ask the first one. So Upanishads, we can say that it is knowledge, right? And then by reading Upanishads, we are acquiring knowledge.
Yes.
So if we try to understand knowledge itself, my question is knowledge intrinsic part of our nature and we forgot it and we are trying to recover it? It's like that? Or is knowledge something which is bestowed when you get, that moment of realization, then it's bestowed?
Yes. Good question. I'll answer that one. You have got a follow-up? Or?
Yeah, you want me to
Hold
ask?
on. Don't forget the follow-up.
Okay. Sure.
Yes. In the Bhagavad Gita, I think 17th verse of 13th chapter, Sri Krishna says, Jyotisham api tad jyoti tamasah paramuchyate jnanam geyam jnanagamyam hridi sarvasya vishtitam. A sublime verse. It is the light of lights said to be forever beyond darkness. It is knowledge. It is that which is to be known, and it is that which is attained by knowledge, and is ever shining in the hearts of all beings. What a verse. Literally a mind-blowing verse.
What's the number of the verse?
For 17th verse of 13th chapter.
17:13.
13.17.
13 point. Okay.
Bhagavad Gita. There he says it is knowledge, jnanam, and this knowledge is you can understand it in two ways. One is, it is consciousness itself. It is consciousness itself. It is awareness itself, which is the heart or essence of knowledge, which is the ultimate reality. It is knowledge itself in that sense. And not, Vivekananda says, not that it knows, it is knowledge itself. By knowledge itself, he means consciousness. And if consciousness is the fundamental reality, then knowledge is or consciousness, that's the sense in which the word knowledge is used. That's one sense. The other sense is exactly what you said. At the moment of enlightenment, knowledge in the sense of knowing something, that arises. And that arises at the moment of enlightenment. This in Vedanta, there are two words which are used. Swarupa Jnana and Vritti Jnana. Swarupa Jnana means our knowledge as our real nature, which is consciousness, chit. And Vritti Jnana is the knowledge which is generated with the help of the mind, illumined by consciousness. So that's called knowledge. So in these two ways. It's also interesting to reflect upon why knowledge is so important. It's because our real nature is already there, and what knowledge does is to uncover it or reveal it to us. In Vedanta, we put it this way. What is attained by knowledge was always there. It was never lost. It's just that we didn't know it. What is removed by knowledge was never there. So samsara is removed by knowledge. So in that case, from a Vedantic perspective, samsara was never there. Brahman, our nature as Brahman is, we gain it by knowledge, which means we were always Brahman. Is a follow-up?
Yeah. So, means it is a part of intrinsic nature also to some extent, because consciousness is intrinsic, so knowledge is also intrinsic.
No.
Right.
Here's the thing. Consciousness is intrinsic.
Yeah.
Consciousness is intrinsic, but knowledge is not intrinsic. Knowledge is intrinsic only in the sense it has to be generated. None of us are born enlightened. I mean, there are cases, but most of us, we are not. Knowledge is gained. We are born ignorant. We have to go to school. So, even earthly knowledge, worldly knowledge, for that you need to go to school. And for spiritual knowledge, that our knowledge of our real nature, that's why Vedanta is there. So that knowledge is generated. And you need to generate it. And that will remove ignorance. And what will that do then? It will reveal to us that knowledge which is our real nature, which is pure consciousness, which is Chit. Yeah. Well, you can follow up. Is there anybody else want to ask? Okay, there are some others. Yes, we can. But this kind of epistemology is, of course, non-dual Vedanta. Other schools of Vedanta will have different epistemologies. Yes.
Maharaj, I enjoyed the talk thoroughly. Subroto here. So my question is about how do I reconcile between Om Brahmasmi and what Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Sarva dharma parityajyam mamaki sharanam braja.
Why not? I am Brahman, and Krishna says, giving up all other dharmas, all other rituals, all other practices, take refuge in me alone. Swami Turiyanandaji says in one place, when Swami Vivekananda said I, tini jokhon ami bolten, o shob loye ami bolten. His I would be the cosmic I, which is Brahman. Which literally Aham Brahmasmi would be true in his case. Swami Vivekananda. And then Turiyanandaji goes on to say that Amader ashena sahoje. It doesn't come so easily to us. Who is saying this? Swami Turiyananda. And he says, Amra jano ekta choto alada kichu hoye achi. As we have become like separated, a small entity separate from that. So that's why I say, tuhu, you, thou. So if you take the thou approach, then take refuge in the Lord. Give up all other practices and take refuge in that reality alone. Then our smallness will go away and we realize the infinite. Or you can do the other way around. That I am the infinite. Both will work. And both mean the same thing. One is the Advaitic approach, I am that. The other one is the Dvaita approach of I take refuge in that. Yeah.
Hey, Swami. I was listening to your talk about the referring to the horses and the senses, and I'm realizing, and Sudarshana tried to help me, but I don't think I'm clear yet. Buddhi, maybe it's because I'm Western, mind is mind, but that in Hindu splits buddhi from mind, and so is the buddhi the innate intelligence that guides the mind if we can tune into it? And is it closer to consciousness?
You're right. It is the mind. And there's no harm if you take it as just the mind. But what Vedanta, not only Vedanta, it's Sankhya, in fact, all the Indian systems in various ways, they split the mind into the mind and intelligence. And intelligence is said to be the higher mind. So, for example, the chariot analogy in the Katha Upanishad. So the chariot is the body. The senses are the horses. And the path they are running on is the objects of the senses. So the eyes goes out to forms, ears listen to sounds. These are the paths on which the horses are running. And the horses are controlled by the reins. The reins are the mind. The reins are the mind. And the driver is the buddhi. You're not the driver. You are a big shot. You have a chauffeur. So the driver is the buddhi. And you are the passenger in the chariot. You are the witness consciousness. So you are the passenger. The driver is the intellect. And the mind is the reins by which the horses are controlled. Now you can see the mind has been split into two parts. One is the one by which I control the body and the senses. I can open my eyes, I can close my eyes, I can hear, I choose not to hear, so on. That's the mind which is dealing with the senses. And then the one which deals with processing the information which is coming in through the mind, the intellect. Now, this intelligence is not innate and it needs to be educated. The mind needs to, so the chariot analogy goes on to say that the senses need to be trained like good horses. The mind needs to be, literally the word used is samanaska, mindfulness. It's ancient, quite clearly pre-Buddhistic. But there the word mindfulness is literally the mindfulness is mentioned there, samanaska. And the intellect needs to be well educated, vijnanavan. That means you need plenty of Vedanta for the intellect. But you need to go to school. You're not born with, just as we are not born with secular knowledge, we are not born with Vedantic knowledge also. So the intellect needs to go to school, the mind needs to be mindful, and the senses and the body need training and discipline. Then the chariot will reach the destination. The passenger will be delivered, enlightened, freed. Otherwise, there's going to be a crash.
So is it the buddhi that's questioning, like those brilliant questions?
It's the buddhi, yes, of course. It's the buddhi which asks these wonderful questions. Yes.
Hi, my name is Prabha. So when I'm listening to talks or even when I read books, I seem to understand, and it all makes sense mostly, sometimes even not that, and I get doubts. But the main problem I have is in staying with it when I'm living my daily life, right? This oneness that you talk about, right? So how to make progress in that?
I'm glad it makes sense. I mean, it didn't make sense to me.
It seems to make sense.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to me for a long time, but yeah, it seems to make sense. First is to understand it with the intellect. And that understanding, it has to be not only an intellectual understanding, it has to be a kind of a visceral understanding. That we understand it with our whole being. It's a fact. Right now, that I am this body, here's this body, here's this mind, I am this, it's not an intellectual concept, it's truth for me. And that I am the witness consciousness, I am awareness, should become the truth for me. It should be as visceral as that. Vivekananda says, until it tingles with every drop of your blood. Affirm this truth again and again and again. I was reading, so once somebody took a picture of Swami Shivanandaji. They said, Swami, you need to take a picture. And he said, a photograph of the formless. Another time, Swami Akhandanandaji was asked to write a message for the centenary of Sri Ramakrishna. And he said, centenary of the eternal. It doesn't make any sense. Now, notice, they're not just saying those things to be cool. They literally mean it. They feel that I am the formless. You're taking a picture of the body. That's not me. You are celebrating 100 years of Sri Ramakrishna, but I know Sri Ramakrishna to be eternal. So their shift had occurred so clearly that I am not the body, not the mind. I am limitless existence, consciousness, bliss. It seems theoretical for us. Here's the principle in Vedanta. A theoretical understanding is not strong enough to cut down a visceral feeling. A theoretical understanding is theoretical. So that conceptual understanding is not strong enough to cut down a body identification, which is a felt identification. So it must be a felt understanding which can cut down this felt identification. So we must arrive at that first, and then you will see it persists.
So that is the question. So how do I go from this theoretical understanding to this visceral realization?
Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Hear it again and again. Think about it. And then stay with the clarity which comes after hearing and thinking. Stay with it. As Vivekananda says, tell yourself again and again, I am that, soham, I am he, or I am that, until it tingles with every drop of your blood. Repeat it again and again. Sri Ramakrishna says, the one who thinks I am free, that one will be free. The one who thinks I am bound, which is that rascal will be bound. This is literally from the Ashtavakra, first chapter. Muktavimani mukto hi, baddhavimani baddho baddhavimani api, kim vadanti yam satyayam, yamati sa gatir bhavet. That the one who feels I am free will be free. The one who feels I am bound is going to be bound. This ancient adage, this saying is true. What you think, that you will be. So this, you might say, is it kind of self-hypnotization? Vivekananda called it dehypnotization. It's already a fact. It's just we have hypnotized ourselves into thinking I am this body, mind. For example, you say, I get what you are saying, Swami. You do right now. You feel, yes, I am this awareness, I understand this. We are here, right? Is this true to some extent? And you see this when I go out there and I become confused, or I forget it. Either I forget it or I become confused. So that I forget it, who experiences this forgetting? Does Prabha experience the forgetting? Doesn't Prabha experience? I'm asking you. And that Prabha is different from this Prabha? No, you're the same one. The same one who saw the intellect which grasped this teaching. The same one who suddenly realized, I've totally forgotten what was taught. But it was the same one, wasn't it? And what was that which did not change? When the understanding changed in the intellect, but that same one did not change. That same one is what? It's that one we are talking about. It does not go away when the understanding goes away. The understanding is secondary. Once you realize that's what is being pointed out, then the understanding will become secondary. If it stays, good. If it doesn't stay, goodbye. You don't depend on the mind anymore after that. But to come to that point, there must be a period of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Keep hearing this. Keep thinking about it. And stay with the clarity. This is the method in Vedanta. All right, should we wrap up? It's 8:40. Thank you so much. Yes. More of it next week.
Swami, I kind of had a follow-up.
Yes.
Would be eager to ask about that.
Now, late,
Is
we'll have another chance.
All right, very quick. Quick.
That's a quick.
So you mentioned briefly, Asim.
Asim, yes.
You mentioned briefly that it's just as important for the potency of these Mahavakyas to also reflect upon the question. So, yeah, I just wanted to ask about that since it seemed related, allowing the question to marinate in our entire being before trying to arrive at the conclusion intellectually.
True, true. That's what Professor Arindam Chakrabarti told me. And I mean, as I studied, for example, the Keno Upanishad, it begins to seem to me that whatever has happened in this Keno Upanishad, which is a very dramatic, exciting Upanishad, but over the chapter 1, 2, 3, I am seeing that we are not going one step beyond the original question. The question is, what light lights up my seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, imagining? That was the question. And the entire Upanishad seems just an expansion of the question. So you stay with the question, let the question vibrate. And then the answers will make sense and will become very, as you said, very potent. Will be powerful enough to remove our ignorance. Yes.
So it was very thought-provoking, and to remember all what he has said, you need to listen to it 10 times, 20 times. We all need that. And that's the Sravana Manana, what he is emphasizing. Anyhow, this is a sudden surprise, and we got so much benefit out of it. And Swami will be coming back on next Tuesday and Wednesday, no?
Tuesday and Wednesday. Monday, Santa Barbara.
Tuesday and Wednesday. 2 opportunities will be there, 7:30 to 8:30 on next Tuesday and Wednesday. So what to thank, we are really very happy to have our brother with us again. And thank you, Swami. Bye. And thank you all for coming. Jai Ma.
He's very tired. So